Hey everyone, I am so sorry. I need to apologize. I was ready to go. I have my point here that I wanted to address, but the internet has been down for the past 3 hours, and it's not just us. I see the bar across the street and several of the restaurants having issues with their processors as well. So a lot of the folks here in Fort Worth depended on AT&T, and at least for this immediate area, you can tell that nobody's working. So I should have just gone home as soon as it went down. But I really have full faith that after that 1 hour that they quoted, we would be up and running. However, that is not the case. But anyway, I committed to this, so I want to make sure that I deliver. It'll be a few hours late. I will record this now and upload it when I get home. So hopefully you're watching this a few hours after recording. It's about 6:11 p.m. on a Thursday, the 21st of March. So again, my apologies. This is something I did not foresee happening. I don't think anybody would, but we're gonna go. And I know what you're thinking. Hey, well, there's a hotspot with your phone. And you're right. However, I have Sprint, and I don't feel like it's going to make it the entire length of this presentation. So we're just going to make this work. It's going to happen, and that's me being done with the negativity. So anyway, thank you so much for watching this. I will go straight through the intro, and actually I'll bypass the intro because there's no need at this point. It had a lot of good stuff, but I'll let it die there. The agenda for tonight is going over the bucket system that I mentioned a few days ago. So that's why I didn't want to delay it any further. I mentioned this almost in passing. From somebody started a thread, and I mentioned the whole bucket system of how I categorize Remine and how I use it in different forms. So different applications for Remine. And the first one is Remine the Time Saver. That is more of the concept of trading time for money. Then Remine the Prospector, where you go out and make money. And then Remine the Matchmaker. So the three are the Time Saver, the Prospector, and the Matchmaker. Those are words that I personally associated to Remine. This isn't necessarily their training because it's not. And it's a good time for me to pause here and share that I am not an employee of Remine. They're not paying me to do this. I'm not paying them to do this. So I wanted to throw that out there. And the reason I mention it is because every other day I get a comment about Remine, either on my YouTube videos or an email or a call, a text, a DM asking about Remine, and also, like what's your affiliation? And I'm a user. That's it. If at some point down the future I get a check from them, I'll let you know. But until then, this is where we're at. But anyway. So the bucket system, kind of how it came to be, how I created it, if you will. I hate to say created it because it denotes that it's something fancy, but really it's not. It's not perfect. It's something I just created out of necessity because I was getting those comments, I was getting those calls, those DMs and emails asking about Remine. And generally the conversation was, I just signed up for Remine and I want to maximize it. I found your videos and I found them helpful, but how do I use them, right? So how do I use Remine? How do I maximize whatever's being spent? Or as soon as it was introduced into a market, people want to leverage it, and rightly so. Everybody, with something new, you certainly want to optimize it, especially if you're making that financial commitment. So out of necessity, I created this bucket system, what I call the bucket system. It's just more categorizing what Remine can do for you and what it's doing presently for me. So since this is really a new technology, you need to consider yourself as an early adopter. because effectively that's what it is. Remine has, they're transitioning out of the startup phase, if you will, but they still need to be flexible, keep up with the customer service, keep improving, and more importantly, keep innovating. And if you've been a member of Remine, especially this group, for the past 3 months, you certainly see that with the dashboard looking considerably different than from a year ago, from 6 months ago, from 3 months ago. And even this week, you saw the introduction of that direct mail feature that you can do directly from Remine. So it's constantly evolving. And so for myself and for my business, I found it important to categorize them as well, not only just to explain it, but for what I do in setting the foundation of what Remine can do for me as new widgets are introduced, as new value add is being introduced, and different functionalities that go with Remine. So you'll see that manifest itself in a few minutes. But really, that's the nature of the bucket system. Again, it's by no means the... Well, I'll just stop. I ought to be belaboring the point there. Anyway, so Remine the time saver. Again, so we have Remine the time saver. That's the first one. Remine the Prospector, and Remine the Matchmaker. In this category, Remine the time saver for me is trading time for money. We're really saving money by saving time. And one of the features that helps me do that is Remine the CMA. So Remine CMA 360, I believe is what they call it. And what I like about the CMA is that it includes off-market properties. That is a big value add for me, and it's a quick CMA. Now, this is something that they introduced a few months ago. Full disclosure, I've only used it with a limited amount of clients because it is very difficult to pull me away from RPR. The reason for that is because RPR is just such a robust system that allows me to do manual edits per category. So Remine, every once in a while, I'll do those quick pulls, those quick CMAs, if I don't have time to get into the Remine system and really get out that detailed CMA, if you will. But it continues to improve. Remine does continue to improve from the CMA standpoint, and I do find value in that, especially because of the off-market properties. If you're doing the MLS, if you're doing this MLS CMA directly from the MLS, chances are you don't get off-market properties. So from that aspect, if you're not using RPR, or if you're looking for a CMA creator, this would be a good avenue for you. And they also have the integration with Cloud CMA. Cloud CMA, I use it more as a lead magnet. I use it more as a landing page with those, well, it's included in my email signature, and it's also embedded in quite a few of my other business pages and group pages and everything of the like. So it's everywhere. If you're looking to get a CMA landing page, if you will, Cloud CMA has been a good avenue for me, and I like the fact that it is directly integrated with Remine because it does help me with time as well. So I use that more as a lead magnet where, hey, do you want a CMA? Do you want to see what your property is worth? So you do need to be careful with it because you are not providing an appraisal, so you're not valuating the property. So be careful with the terminology. Now, really where it saves me, where Remine saves me the most amount of time is in the property profiles. So whenever you click on a profile, whenever you click on one of the properties, I find so much value in being the quick expert is what I call. So in these property profiles, and when I say property profiles, I mean that blue dot that when you click on it, it gives you all of the information. You get school information, so you get the ratings. And this isn't, so you know that you want to be careful with the words that you use and what you can say and can't say, what you can say and can't say when it comes to schools. And, you know, if you're constantly being asked, hey, what's the school system? Hey, how are the schools here? So you have to be careful with what you articulate, but I believe it's niche. I think that's the plugin that Remine uses. But you get the school information from every single property. So I like that. And the rating system and the teacher to student ratio on every single property. So a property sheet, I would much rather, and I do, get that printout from the property profile and have that in hand when I'm going and showing clients, especially for the first time. So yes, you can do the MLS printout, and that's going to take you a certain way there. But when it comes to getting that quick expert tag, if you will, by providing school information, providing demographic information, providing valuations, and I know we're not big fans of Zestimates, nor should you be, but these property profiles, they provide four different valuations. Let's see if I can remember them. One of them is a Zestimate. The other one is an appraisal. The other one is Black Knight. I think it's Black Knight, or it could be Black Rock. It might be Black Knight, in which it's data. It's real estate data. The other one is, sorry, I just got a message over here from the group. So the other one is, what I get for trying to do it from memory. I should have logged in. What is the other one? First American Home Warranty. First American Home Warranty. That's the fourth valuation that you get. So you get a good aggregate, and you're able to provide that to your client. Of course, this doesn't mean you don't do your own CMA, but at least it's a quick way to be that expert and just print that out. And you provide much more value with those 3 pages than having that one-sheeter from the MLS sheet that has lots, block, and all this other stuff that is really not as valuable to your clients. All right, next point, tracking properties. I like the aspect of tracking properties where I'm able to import my contacts, so my sphere of influence, and match up the properties. Now, I get myself into trouble quite a bit here because if you watched any of my other videos, I am very Facebook leveraged. So I'm not your cold caller. I'm not your door knocker. I don't necessarily use Remine in that capacity. I use it in more leveraged on Facebook. So I get myself into trouble there when I'm list stacking. So pulling the information, adding it to my Excel sheet, and then importing it as a custom audience to Facebook. I get myself in trouble there because as soon as I pull the data, I untrack it. So I'm not constantly tracking a certain neighborhood. I try to upload my sphere of influence, tag them, and then always remember whenever I'm clearing out the dashboard or clearing out the track properties to exclude those and leave those as my track properties so they can continue giving me notifications as the deed information changes or they went and listed with somebody else. So I try to be good with my sphere of influence in that respect. And instead of pulling those along with my data pool and then wiping them out, I try to keep them on my dashboard, but it just so happens that most of the time I forget. So for you, if you're using it in the proper way, I suppose, leaving the tracked properties on the tracked dashboard, if you will, and not wiping away the information every single time you do a data pool, that's going to work well for you. But I do like that aspect from a time saver perspective. Tracking people, you are able to track people, but it won't give you any indicators. You get to see them being tracked, and if they go from a low sales score to a medium sales score to a high sales score, or vice versa with the buyer score, then you are able to see that. But as far as any other notifications, you don't necessarily see that. Now, of course, Remine will continue adding functionality, widgets, integrations, and it's going to continue to evolve. Again, it goes back to that innovation. It goes back to continually improving and just providing more and more offers, if you will. I think they're even going to become, don't quote me on this one, but I'm fairly certain they're going to become an MLS. If I want to say I read that, and I could be completely misspeaking, but I don't think I am. Anyway, main point, they are continuing to improve. All right, so that was Remine from the time saver perspective. And the reason I created that is more of the time saver bucket for me is more of internal processes, where if Remine were to introduce a different widget, a different integration, a different whatever, if it were to actually become a CRM as an example, then that would be more to my time saver bucket, where I could just add that in. As soon as, here's exactly what I do. As soon as, example. Remine just this past week released the direct mail feature, where you're able to upload the list and send off direct mail from Remine. So every time something like that happens, I look at the functionality and I categorize it into one of my buckets. And again, I've already mentioned the buckets, but we'll go through it again. Remine, the time saver, the prospector, and then the matchmaker. So that would be categorized in my mind as a time saver. It could also be categorized as the prospector, because ultimately that's the function that you're using. But I categorize them into a bucket. I categorize the application into a bucket and then make that determination if it's worth implementing it in my business. Now, simply because there's a lot of features that Remine offers right now doesn't mean that I use all of them. Case in point, the CMA example that I gave you. I do foresee myself using their CMA more and more in the future as it continues to evolve and improve and get to a level where I feel very, very comfortable with it, not only from the functionality standpoint, but from my comfort level of using it. So I take the applications, I categorize it into a bucket, and then make the decision if I'm going to implement it into my business. So it either needs to save me time, it needs to save me money, or make me money, right? So that's really, when you think about it, that's what you're doing with any new feature, any new CRM that comes out there, any new whatever. That is what happens. So very similar here. Remine, the prospector, going on to 2. I do want to keep this as I do want to keep going. I have a tendency to ramble, so doing this live would have helped tremendously, where you would be able to keep me on point. But let's keep going. Anyway, so Remine, the prospector, is how I view it: going out there and making money. Go out there and make money. How am I going to go out and make money? And the prospector, how you prospect is really direct mail, door knocking, cold calling, text marketing, email marketing, and social media marketing. I wanted to include online marketing as well because there's something that I want to integrate in my Google Ads, but I'm not there yet. I don't want to give too much away on that part because it's not tested. But as soon as I get that functionality from Google Ads that I expect to hit here in a couple of weeks, I will share what that is. But for right now, it's not tested. But anyway, when it comes to prospecting, you are either doing direct mail, door knocking, cold calling, text marketing, email marketing, social media marketing. And this is independent of Remine, right? So what Remine's designed to do is be an overlay to what you're presently doing and save you time and save you money, ideally making you money. So from a prospector standpoint, this is huge for me, where this is where you have all of the filters. This is where we introduce the whole buy score, the sell score, where by definition is those properties that are highly likely to sell in the next 12 months get that high sell score. Those properties that are likely to sell in the between 12 and 24 months get the medium sell score, and then 24 months and above, everything else is the low score. So this is all the filters that you see on the left-hand side. This is all the filters that you see at the top, which are more specifically, the filters at the top of your dashboard, your screen, is characteristics of the property. That's where you have the beds, the bath, the square footage, the garages, and everything of the like. On the left-hand side, that's where you have the filters such as equity, list price, the sell score, the flood zone, property type, absentee, all of these filters on the left-hand side. Where if you mash those together, you're overlaying and setting essentially having a list, having a punch-out list of what you're going to go and do with that. So how you're going to go out there and prospect. So you're taking this list, and then many of you are doing the direct mail. Now, there's nothing right or wrong about that. It's just that's where a lot of people seem to gravitate. The door knocking, there's a gentleman that does a lot of door knocking, and I wish I would remember his name right now, but props to you. I mean, I've seen the progression on how diligent you are with that, so that's pretty awesome. Cold calling, where you get all the information. So anyway, the prospector standpoint is overlaying what you're presently doing it and making it smarter, saving you time, ideally saving you money and making you money. But to provide a bit more value in this section, I want to go over a few, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different filters that I may include them in the post as a peace offering, if you will, for not being able to go live. So prospecting filters that work, and these are ones that I have used in the past. Markets are different, results will vary. How you follow up with them is very important. Very important. Prior to coming on, as I was typing my apology message, I did see a mention of, I'm giving up on Facebook leads. There's somebody mentioned that in the group, but I think a lot of that frustration is not necessarily not being able to generate leads, because generating leads from the internet is not that difficult when you think about it, and especially from a free method. But what really is difficult, or where it gets complicated, is converting those leads. So it's in that follow-up. I don't want to give that cliche of, hey, it's all in the follow-up. I believe in that, but it only takes you a certain way. At some point you have to convert. At some point you have to close them and do all that stuff. So there's a lot of variables when it comes to that. So I can see myself going down a rabbit hole. Let's get back to it. If you're looking for seller and buyer leads, here's something you can try. Get the properties. Again, this is where the top of the dashboard, where you're going to see physical characteristics of the property. Filter to 2-story homes and look for homes that have equity above 50%. I know that Remine does not give you the option to do 10%, 20%, 50%. The really silly math that I use is I look for properties that have $500,000 in value, that are valued $500,000, and then I look. So that would be the value price, and then I look at the home equity. So half of that would be $250,000. So I would want to see at least $250,000. And I know that as it goes up in value, the property that 50% goes lower. So I'm aware of that, but just giving you the illustration, the limitation of the percentage, but also the way around finding the home equity to make this work. So again, the 2-story homes, filter those out, only get you properties that are 2 stories, and then only get properties that have a home equity of 50% or more. So those are the 2 filters that you would need to do. And then going back to the way that you're going to prospect, either you're door knocking, you're direct mailing, you're doing Facebook ads. In my what I've done and has been successful has been on the Facebook advertising side, where I just run a single story list to these properties, to the people that were found on the custom audience. And then where it gets really fun is where I take this audience, retarget them, which you kind of have to do in order to make your ads work even more and increase your return on investment. But where it gets really awesome is where you turn around and create a lookalike audience. So it takes that custom audience that you uploaded and it goes out and reproduces similar profiles through Facebook. So that's really where you see an exponential growth in leads and return on investment. So that took way too long. I'm sorry. I am going to have to post this. These would be seller and buyer leads. So they're selling their 2-story home and ideally buying the single-story homes. Now, the latest bombshell from Facebook is that they're taking a few filters away from those from those ads that are home-based, that are real estate oriented. So there's some filters that are going away. Last year, we saw the removal of likely to move, renters, homeowners. Those filters went away and there was a panic. And then this week, there's another panic because you can't target by age. You can't do anything that would be deemed as discriminatory. So this becomes even more valuable to you if you're advertising in the Facebook world. If you're not advertising with Remine data on Facebook, doesn't mean anything to you. So we can keep going. Mortgage rate of 6% and up. We know that the interest rates aren't necessarily going to be going up too much this year, given it's been a long day. Who announced it? Was it the Fed? But even then, the Fed doesn't necessarily have just because they're not raising it doesn't mean, anyway. Yeah, so mortgage rates, they're not going up they're not going up. They are going up in the future, I suppose, but not anytime soon. I'm pretty mortgage ignorant, as you can clearly tell. But what I like about this is where you're able to introduce a lender into your marketing. Lenders do find value in this, as you can imagine, finding people that are financing themselves to 6% and up. Those people still exist. And being able to refinance is very important for them, especially if they're able to get rates in the 4s. I mean, if you move somebody 2 points, that can manifest itself in $50,000 more house. So that would be an ad that you could certainly run, or a message that you can certainly run with if you're doing direct mail, if you're email marketing, text marketing, whatever the case may be. Now, you do need to be careful when you're advertising percentages, as you probably already know, we'll just talk to a lender to see all of the regulations that you have to abide by that. So that's why it's important to go ahead and include a lender in your marketing, because they're going to, help you stay out of trouble. That's a good thing. All right, so to get seller leads, look for those properties that have a paid off mortgage and have a filter of 20, have an ownership of the property 20 years and more. So the pitch for them is they are potentially looking to cash out. If they've owned the property for 20 years and they have the mortgage fully paid out, cashing out is not a bad idea. Now, what happens and what you're going to be hearing is, the tax burden is going to be an issue. So offer them that seller carry. Offer them to carry a note and reduce their tax burden. That's a depending on the medium that you're using to advertise, whether if you're already doing direct mail or if you're having the conversation with the people that are in this situation, it'll depend how upfront you are with the information or how many rebuttals you need to overcome and at what point, meaning the whole tax burden when you introduce that where the option to sell or carry is available. It'll depend on the mode that you're using to prospect, but at the end of the day, that's a filter that you should consider. Another is if you're targeting buyers, go to the absentee filter and only filter those properties that have absentee owners. So what that means is somebody is in there and most likely it's a renter. So you know that these properties have a renter inside. So if you are a door knocker, if you are a cold caller and have that information, then it's very valuable to you, which ultimately you could be working with a buyer, as the message is going to be simple. Are you tired of paying somebody else's mortgage? The other one, buyer and investor. So Airbnb is also a feature. Doing some quick math on what an Airbnb can do for somebody's investment portfolio is going to go a long way. So you're going to get some pretty active investors, some pretty active buyers. If you can do the math for them and show how financially feasible and how financially beneficial it can be for their portfolio. Staying on the investor train, looking for cash buyers. So if a mortgage has not been attributed or matched up with the property that recently changed title, is to my understanding there's a certain amount of waiting. I want to say it's like 2 days. If there's not a mortgage that's tied to a property, that doesn't happen, then they are deemed to be cash buyers. So if you go out and get those properties and get get those owners that are associated to those properties, then you are looking at cash buyers, especially if they are absentee owners. There you have your investor list. Now, what was that? Well, I kind of gave the last one away. Looking for investors that are not living in the property. You just add to your investor list and target to them how you would advertise or how you would prospect to them like any other means. So that's pretty self-explanatory. All right. That was our second bucket. That was the bucket of the prospector, saving you time, saving you money, and ideally making you money. Now the third bucket, Remine the Matchmaker. Matchmaker, just think of it as client engage. That feature that was introduced by Remine about 2 months ago. The reason I call it Remine the Matchmaker is because it matches the property to the client and then it matches the client to me. So the value add for a client is that they get a lot more information and more accurate information than if they were to go to a Zillow as an example. The value add for you as an agent is you give those people, you give your clients access to something that's more user-friendly, and you don't have to, you don't have to be ashamed by your MLS any longer. But more importantly, you get to see the activity of somebody that logs into the portal. So me as a agent, I get to see the activity of buyers that either I either I direct them directly into the portal if I'm already working with them, or I can use it as a landing page mechanism where I have this in various different places. So if you go on my social media, you're going to see my client engage link, whether that's Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. You're going to see it in a lot of Craigslist ads. You're going to see it in a lot of other places. So there's actually a video that I share everywhere else. I put the the client engaged because I'm using it as a landing page. If you already have Remine, especially on the Pro plan, you have access to it. And you also have access to it on the free plan, if I'm not mistaken. So sorry, I take it as a given that you're on the Pro plan, which is where I'm at. If some of the features, some of the functionalities aren't there on the free version, my apologies. I'm just going straight off of what I know and what I'm seeing. And again, sometimes I take it for granted that I'm on the Pro. So the client engage, you can either see it as a landing page, simply a landing page, or you can see it more as a, let me backtrack. You can see it as a landing page in an IDX website, which it kind of is, but you could also see it, and this is where I would invite you, this is how I would invite you to see it, as a workflow invite. You're inviting people, you're inviting your buyers and sellers onto your workflow, where you get to see the activity of these buyers, especially on these buyers, how many homes they've searched for, what they have saved, what the activities that they've had. And I like it now. I like Remine Client Engaged now, but really where it's going is just going to be phenomenal. The widgets that can be added to it, the additional functionality, the user experience is going to be so much better for clients. It's crazy. So I'm out there inviting my sphere of influence, but more than anything, I'm actually going out and setting these little traps, if you will, setting these little I hate to say landing pages because I just told you to think of it as a workflow, but to really drive the point home, I just see them as mini landing pages, or see it as a landing page where it does so much for the consumer outside of them just giving you their information. Yes, they will give you their information. They will give you their name, their email, optional their phone, but they get to create their portal and browse around. You don't have to do anything for this. It's found money for you. So if you create your client engaged page and then start posting it everywhere, you're going to be surprised the amount of people that log in. So the next iteration for me is going to be running some ads to it, but I'm not there yet. Right now I'm just walking people through the cycle. So the first full cycle has been a client that I didn't know before. This was not part of my sphere of influence, that we're closing April 7th. That is my first true client engaged client, if you will. So I'm from them just appearing in my dashboard one day out of the blue to closing on April 7th. And I believe we only went searching for homes 3 days. They got pre-qualified with Ryan. Took them about 4 days to get all their information in. I mean, from start to finish, we're looking at probably 45 days, which is about average. But that's not even doing it in full scale. There's a lot of other people that have logged in or created an account without me even knowing. So that's the one thing that I believe that we'll be implementing or adding soon, the whole notification. So right now it still involves me logging into Remine and finding pleasant surprises that somebody created an account versus getting a notification. So that's something I'm really looking forward to, because I put that link everywhere. And there's a lot of other ways to implement it into your business, but right now, again, I'm just going through the full cycle of the client using it from beginning to end. And it's been working. So I'm really excited for that piece. Really excited for the advanced ways to use this as it continues to improve. But really, that's really all I had for you. I was hoping to, again, I'll just stop apologizing. You know what happened, the whole live and the internet stuff. But Remine the time saver. Remine the Prospector, Remine the Matchmaker. It's not a perfect system. It's not There's probably something that I missed, but as far as for me, having a way to structure what Remine can do really helps me out, because as new applications come out, as new widgets come out, as new whatever comes out, I'm able to categorize it, review it, and see if it works for me. As you saw in the first part with a time saver, I'm not using everything in the time saver. I'm not using everything in the Prospector. And I'm not, well, yeah, I guess Client Engage, I am using everything. But they'll continue to add stuff where the value add for clients is just going to continue to improve. They get the MLS. They don't have to access Zillow anymore, so you don't risk those people clicking over to that link and those refer or premier agents, if you will. They don't have to open up a different mortgage calculator and make the calculations on every single property every single time. They don't have to go over to the CAD if they really want to know who the owner of the property is or anything of the like. They don't have to go into a school rating system. It's already implemented right in front of them, and they get realistic valuations, at least an average of valuations, not just Zillow. But play around with it. And whatever you do, don't try to do everything. Again, you saw that I don't. And I'm not saying do exactly what I'm saying or suggesting, but do something, be consistent with it, and it's going to work out. It's going to work out. Don't try to boil the ocean, because that just won't work. Outside of that, let me know if there's any questions below. We'll reschedule this live if there's any interest down the road. As you can see, it was a 40-minute worth of ramble. My apologies on that, but let me know if you have any questions.